The stars twinkled against the vast darkness of space as the Earth Alliance vessel Defiance approached the massive Zeraxian flagship. The ship's engines hummed quietly, carrying its crew toward what they hoped would be a peaceful first official meeting between humans and the powerful Zeraxian Empire. Captain Susan Clark stood on the bridge, her blue uniform crisp and her posture perfect. She had prepared for this moment for months. The Zeraxians had expanded through their sector of the galaxy with alarming speed, conquering or forcing other species to submit to their rule. Earth and its colonies had managed to stay neutral until now, focusing on trade and scientific research rather than building weapons. "Are the diplomatic packages ready?" Susan asked, turning to her communications officer. "Yes, Captain. Cultural information, trade proposals, and friendship offerings are all prepared," replied Officer Samantha Kelly, her fingers moving quickly over her console. "The translator program is updated with all the Zeraxian dialect information we have." Susan nodded. "Good. Lieutenant Howard, status of our shields?" Jack Howard, a young man with sharp eyes and quick reflexes, looked up from the tactical station. "Shields are at minimal power as agreed, Captain. Just enough to protect against space debris. Weapons systems are powered down completely." "Perfect. We don't want them to think we came looking for trouble." Susan took a deep breath. This mission could change humanity's future. If they could establish peaceful relations with the Zeraxians, it would open up new trade routes and protect the outer colonies from possible aggression. The Defiance slowed as it approached the designated meeting point. The Zeraxian flagship came into view and several crew members gasped. It was enormous, at least 5 times the size of their ship, with a design that reminded Susan of ancient Earth predators. Sharp angles, dark metal plating, and weapon ports lined its hull. "They certainly want to look intimidating," Susan said quietly to her first officer, Commander Ben Nelson. Ben's expression remained neutral, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Do you think that's just for show? Or should we be concerned?" "Let's find out," Susan replied. "Open a channel to the Zeraxian vessel." The main screen flickered, and the image of Admiral Casthor appeared. The Zeraxian commander was tall, with scale-covered, skin in shades of green and bronze. His yellow eyes had vertical pupils that narrowed as he looked at the human crew. "Captain Clark of Earth," he said, his translator making his deep voice understandable. "Your ship may dock in Bay 7. You and 2 officers may board for our discussion." Susan nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Admiral. We look forward to establishing friendly relations between our peoples." The screen went dark before she could say more. "Not big on small talk, are they?" Ben commented. "Different cultures, different communication styles," Susan reminded him. "Let's not judge too quickly. Ben, you'll come with me. Lieutenant Howard, you too." Jack looked surprised. "Me, Captain? Wouldn't Officer Kelly be better for a diplomatic mission?" "I want someone with tactical training," Susan said quietly. "Just in case." 30 minutes later, Susan, Ben, and Jack stood in the docking bay of the Zeraxian flagship. They were surrounded by tall, armored Zeraxian soldiers who stood silently, their weapons visible but not pointed at the humans. A door slid open, and Admiral Casthor entered. In person, he was even more imposing, nearly 7 feet tall with powerful limbs and a confidence that came from years of military victory. "Follow," he said simply, turning without waiting for a response. They were led through dimly lit corridors to a large room with a long table. Various Zeraxian officials sat on one side. Susan noted that all of them wore military uniforms with different rank insignia. "Please sit," Casthor said, gesturing to the empty chairs. Susan placed the diplomatic package on the table. "Admiral, on behalf of the Earth Alliance, I bring greetings and proposals for peaceful cooperation between our peoples." The Admiral picked up the package and handed it to an aide without looking at it. "Tell me, Captain Clark, how many warships does Earth possess?" The question caught Susan off guard. "We maintain a defense fleet, Admiral, but Earth's focus has been on scientific advancement and trade relations." Casthor made a sound that might have been a laugh. "So you are defenseless?" "Not defenseless," Susan corrected carefully. "We simply prioritize peaceful solutions to conflicts. Our defensive capabilities are adequate for our needs. The Admiral leaned forward. In our experience, species that cannot fight do not survive. Those who can fight but choose not to are simply waiting to be conquered. Susan felt the conversation shifting in a dangerous direction. With respect, Admiral, humanity has a long history of warfare on our home planet. We've learned that cooperation often brings greater benefits than conflict. We're hoping to share that perspective with the Zeraxian Empire. A weak perspective, another Zeraxian official said dismissively. Spoken like true prey, Jack tensed beside her and Susan gave him a warning glance. We've studied your colonies, Casthor continued. Rich in resources we could use. Your ships are small, your weapons outdated. Tell me why we should trade for what we could simply take? Susan's diplomatic smile remained in place, but her mind raced. This wasn't going as planned. Because taking by force what could be gained through friendship always costs more in the long run. Humanity would make a valuable ally, Admiral. Or obedient subjects, Casthor countered. He stood suddenly. This meeting is over. You have nothing to offer except the territories you control. Susan stood as well. Admiral, please reconsider. War would benefit neither of our peoples. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. Guards, escort Captain Clark and Commander Nelson to holding cells. They will provide useful information about Earth's defenses. What? Susan stepped back as Zeraxian soldiers moved toward them. This violates all diplomatic protocols. We are not diplomats, Casthor said coldly. We are conquerors. Your soft-skinned species will learn its place. Everything happened quickly after that. Ben tried to protest and was struck by a guard. Susan moved to help him and felt strong claws grip her arms. In the confusion, she saw Jack slip away through the door they'd entered. The guards focused on capturing the captain and commander first. As she was dragged away, Susan locked eyes with Admiral Casthor. This is a mistake, she said firmly. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly, the Admiral replied. I'm taking the first step toward adding human worlds to our empire. Susan's expression hardened. Then you've just declared war on the most dangerous species you've ever encountered. Casthor laughed. Dangerous? Your ship didn't even come armed. As the guards pulled her from the room, Susan managed to activate the hidden emergency transmitter. In her uniform, it would send one short encrypted message to Earth. Diplomacy failed, defiance captured. Prepare for war. In the chaos, Lieutenant Jack Howard moved silently through the ship's corridors, using the skills from his special operations training. He had to reach the emergency shuttle bay. Someone needed to warn Earth about what had happened and what was coming. As he slipped past a patrol, Jack heard Admiral Casthor's voice echoing from a nearby room. Prepare the fleet. We will take the human mining colony on Europa first, then move inward through their system. Jack's jaw tightened. The Zeraxians had planned this all along. The diplomatic meeting had been a trap. He would make sure they regretted it. The emergency shuttle broke away from the Zeraxian flagship, its stealth systems activated. Inside, Lieutenant Jack Howard worked quickly, his fingers flying over the control panel as he set a course for Europa. The small craft shuddered as it accelerated to full speed. Jack took a deep breath and finally allowed himself to feel the anger that had been building since the meeting. Captain Clark and Commander Nelson were prisoners. The Zeraxians had never intended to establish peaceful relations. They had already planned which human colonies to attack first. Computer, record message for Earth Alliance headquarters, Jack said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. This is Lieutenant Jack Howard of the Earth vessel Defiance. Our diplomatic mission has failed. Captain Clark and Commander Nelson have been taken prisoner. The Zeraxians plan to attack the Europa mining colony first, then move through our system. They believe we are weak and will surrender easily. I'm heading to Europa to warn the colonists. We need immediate military response. He ended the recording and sent it through the emergency quantum channel. The message would reach Earth in minutes, but it would take days for him to reach Europa in the small shuttle. The Zeraxians might get there first. Jack checked the shuttle's weapon systems. One small laser cannon and a handful of defensive countermeasures. Not much, but better than nothing. He hoped it wouldn't come to a fight before reinforcements arrived. On Earth, Defense Secretary Alan Parker sat in the dimly lit Situation Room, surrounded by the 12 members of the Earth Alliance Council. The emergency message from Lieutenant Howard played for the third time. "This is unacceptable," said Counselor Helen Wright, her voice tight with anger. "They violated diplomatic protocol. They've essentially declared war. And we're not ready." "For one," Counselor Paul Martinez pointed out, "the Zeraxian fleet outnumbers ours 3-1, and their weapons technology is more advanced. Perhaps we should consider negotiation." Alan Parker stood up. At 62, he was the oldest person in the room, with gray hair and eyes that had seen more conflicts than he cared to remember. "Negotiation?" he asked quietly. "They've taken our captain and commander prisoner. They're planning to attack our colonies. What exactly do you think there is to negotiate, Counselor?" "Our surrender," Martinez said bluntly. "We could save lives." Parker shook his head. "No, surrender now means extinction later. The Zeraxians think we're weak because we choose peace. They're about to learn the difference between a species that chooses not to fight and one that cannot fight." He turned to the holographic display showing the Earth Alliance territories. "We need to evacuate the outer colonies immediately. Activate all reserve military personnel. Every ship capable of carrying weapons needs to be retrofitted." "That's a war footing," Counselor Wright observed. "Yes," Parker agreed, "because we are at war." The vote was 10-2 in favor of Parker's proposal. Within hours, emergency alerts went out to all Earth colonies. The long-dormant war production facilities on the Moon hummed back to life. Military personnel on leave were recalled to duty. Earth prepared for a fight it had hoped never to face. On Europa, the mining colony was in chaos. Alarms blared as colonists rushed to gather essential belongings. The colony administrator, Frank Daniels, stood in the operations center trying to maintain order. "The evacuation ships will arrive in 72 hours, he announced over the colony-wide communication system. "Priority will be given to children, the elderly, and essential scientific personnel. Everyone must register for transport assignments. Please remain calm." Dr. Olivia Grant watched the panic from her laboratory doorway. As the colony's lead physicist, she knew she would be among those evacuated first. But leaving meant abandoning her work, experimental shield technology that could revolutionize space travel. Or, in current circumstances, space warfare. She closed the door and turned to her assistant. "We're not evacuating, Kyle." Kyle Anderson looked up in surprise. "But the orders—" "Think about it," Olivia interrupted. "The Zeraxians are coming here first. The evacuation ships won't arrive for 3 days. If the Zeraxians get here before then—" She let the implication hang in the air. "We're dead anyway," Kyle finished. "Not necessarily." Olivia moved to her main computer and brought up the schematics for her shield prototype. "This technology works. It's just never been tested at full scale. You want to use it to defend the colony? I want to use it to give us a fighting chance." She started typing rapidly. "Get me access to the colony's main power grid, and find someone from security. We're going to need weapons." Lieutenant Jack Howard's shuttle approached Europa 20 hours later. He had pushed the small craft to its limits, knowing that every minute counted. His heart sank when the long-range scanners detected Zeraxian ships already in orbit around the Moon. "I'm too late," he muttered, but as he got closer, he noticed something strange. The Zeraxian ships weren't attacking. They seemed to be holding position as if hesitating. Jack opened a communication channel on the colony's emergency frequency. "Europa Mining Colony, this is Lieutenant Jack Howard from the Defiance. Please respond." After a moment of static, a woman's voice came through. "Lieutenant Howard, this is Dr. Olivia Grant. We've been expecting you." "Doctor, there are Zeraxian warships in orbit. Why haven't they attacked?" He could hear the smile in her voice when she answered. "Because they can't get through my shield. It's holding for now, but we could use some help down here." Jack adjusted his course toward the coordinates Olivia sent. As he approached, he saw it. a shimmering, translucent dome covering the main colony complex. Zyraxian ships fired periodically at the shield, but their weapons seemed to dissipate on impact. "That's impossible," Jack whispered. Nothing in Earth's current technology could repel Zyraxian weapons so effectively. The shuttle passed through the shield with only a slight tingling sensation. Jack landed at the designated pad where a small group waited for him. Among them was a tall woman with short brown hair who stepped forward as he exited the shuttle. "Lieutenant Howard, I'm Olivia Grant. Welcome to what's probably the only human colony the Zyraxians can't crack open at the moment." Jack shook her hand. "How are you doing this?" "It's an experimental phase shift shield. It's not supposed to be ready for another year, but..." She shrugged. "Nothing motivates innovation like survival." Frank Daniels joined them. "The shield is buying us time, but we don't know how long it will last. Have you heard from Earth? Are reinforcements coming?" "I sent a message," Jack confirmed, "but it will take time to mobilize a response force." "Then we need to prepare," Frank said grimly. "The colonists are angry. These people came here to mine ice and minerals, not to fight a war. But they're ready to defend their homes." Olivia nodded. "We've been modifying mining equipment into makeshift weapons. The drill teams know how to handle explosives. It's not much, but it's a start," Jack finished. He looked up at the dome protecting them and at the determined faces around him. The Zyraxians expected to find helpless, frightened humans ready to surrender. Instead, they found resistance. "Cool, Zyraxians think this will be easy," Jack said. "Let's make sure it's anything but." Far from Europa, deep in Earth territory, Major Lisa Martinez stood silently as her team prepared their equipment. The small hangar contained a ship unlike any other in the Earth fleet, a modified scout vessel with experimental stealth technology. Its dark hull absorbed light rather than reflected it, making it nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. "Final checks complete," said Eric Jones, the communications specialist. A young man with quick hands and quicker eyes, he had been handpicked for this mission along with engineer Peter Williams. Peter looked up from the engine panel he was inspecting. "Propulsion systems are green. The new silent running mode should get us past their outer sensor grid without detection." Lisa nodded. She was 38 years old with a reputation for completing impossible missions. Her short black hair and stern expression gave away nothing of her thoughts. "Good. We launch in 30 minutes. Everyone clear on the mission?" "Infiltrate Zyraxian supply lines, gather intelligence, and cause as much trouble as possible without getting caught," Eric recited. "And if we do get caught?" Peter asked. Lisa's expression hardened. "We don't. But if the worst happens, remember your training. Give them nothing but your name and rank." As her team made their final preparations, Lisa thought about Captain Clark and Commander Nelson, still prisoners on the Zyraxian flagship. Rescue wasn't part of her mission parameters, but the thought of leaving fellow officers in enemy hands bothered her. Perhaps if an opportunity presented itself. She pushed the thought aside. Her mission had larger strategic importance. The success of Earth's resistance might depend on what her team discovered. In the holding cell of the Zyraxian flagship, Captain Susan Clark sat with her back against the wall, eyes closed. Commander Ben Nelson paced the small space, stopping occasionally to examine the cell door. "You should save your energy," Susan said without opening her eyes. "I can't just sit here," Ben replied. "They're planning to attack our colonies. We need to do something." Susan opened her eyes. "We are doing something. Every minute they keep us alive is another minute they're underestimating humans. That works in our favor." Ben sat down beside her. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Susan said, quietly, "that the Admiral thinks we're helpless without him threatening us directly. He thinks we'll give up our colonies to save our lives. He doesn't understand humans at all." A sound at the door made them both look up. A Zyraxian guard entered, followed by a smaller alien that Susan recognized as a medical officer from the insignia on its uniform. "You will answer questions now," the guard said. Susan stood slowly. "I will tell you my name, rank, and identification, number, nothing more." The medical officer stepped forward holding a device Susan didn't recognize. This is not an interrogation. This is a medical examination. We need baseline readings for your species. Susan exchanged a glance with Ben. This might be an opportunity to feed the Zeraxians false information. She nodded slightly. Very well, she said. I'll cooperate with a medical examination. Back on Europa, Jack Howard and Olivia Grant watched the Zeraxian ships on the colony's sensor display. More had arrived, bringing the total to 8 warships in orbit. They're not giving up, Jack observed. Would we? Olivia asked. If our places were reversed. Jack shook his head. No, but their tactics don't make sense. They keep hitting the shield in the same places with the same weapons. They're not adapting. Frank Daniels joined them, wiping sweat from his forehead. The colonists have converted the mining tunnels into shelters. We've got enough food and water for a month. The modified mining drills are set up as defense turrets at key points. What's the status of the evacuation ships? Jack asked. Delayed, Frank said grimly. The Zeraxians have set up a blockade at the Jupiter transfer point. Earth is trying to find a way around it. Olivia turned from the display. The shield won't last indefinitely. We're drawing power from the colony's reactor, but it wasn't designed for this. How long do we have? Jack asked. At current power consumption, maybe 2 weeks. Less if they figure out how to stress the shield more effectively. Jack considered their options. We need to buy more time. And we need to let Earth know exactly what we're facing. He pointed to a small section of the colony map. The long-range communicator in this sector could punch through the Zeraxian jamming if we boost its power. And we have something they want to know about. The shield, Olivia realized. Jack nodded. Earth needs your technology, Doctor, and we need to show the Zeraxians that taking this colony won't be as easy as they thought. On Earth, Admiral Richard Garcia walked through the massive lunar shipyard that had been dormant for decades. Around him, workers swarmed over mothballed warships, bringing systems back online and installing new weapons. How long until the first wave is ready? He asked the shipyard supervisor. 3 days for the destroyers, a week for the larger vessels. The supervisor gestured to a particular section of the yard. We're also converting 50 civilian cargo ships. They won't win beauty contests, but they'll carry weapons and fighters. Garcia nodded. An Operation Hornet's Nest? On schedule. The automated defense platforms are being deployed at these key points. The supervisor highlighted several locations in the solar system on his tablet. If the Zeraxians follow these approach vectors, they'll fly right into them. Garcia studied the tactical display. The Zeraxians had the advantage in numbers and technology, but humans had home field advantage. They knew their system better than any invader could. His communicator chimed. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Europa. It's being routed through multiple relays to avoid detection. Put it through. Lieutenant Howard's face appeared on the small screen. Admiral, we're holding the line here. The colony is protected by an experimental shield developed by Dr. Olivia Grant. The Zeraxians can't break through yet, but they're trying. Garcia's eyes widened. A shield that can withstand Zeraxian weapons? That changes everything. Dr. Grant is sending the technical specifications now. But sir, we've noticed something about the Zeraxian tactics. They're rigid, predictable. They keep trying the same approach even when it fails. The Admiral considered this information. A strategical weakness we can exploit. Good work, Lieutenant. Hold out as long as you can. Reinforcements are coming. After the transmission ended, Garcia immediately called Defense Secretary Parker. Alan, we have a game changer. And maybe our first real advantage. Major Lisa Martinez's stealth ship slipped past the Zeraxian patrol vessels undetected. From their hiding spot behind a small moon, they observed the massive supply depot that served as a staging area for the invasion fleet. Look at their ship design, Peter whispered, even though the Zeraxians couldn't possibly hear them. Everything is linear, orderly. Their docking procedures follow the exact same pattern every time. Their whole society seems to operate that way, Eric added, monitoring communications. Their transmissions follow strict protocols. No deviation. Lisa watched the methodical movement of ships and supplies. A species that values order above adaptation. That's a weakness we can use. She pointed to a fuel storage facility. We'll start there, plant the charges according to the plan. Then we move to Phase 2, tapping into their command communications. As her team prepared for their first sabotage mission, Lisa thought about what they'd observed. The Zeraxians had conquered many worlds through overwhelming force, but had they ever faced an enemy that refused to follow the expected pattern of fear and surrender? They were about to find out what happened when their orderly plans met human unpredictability. 3 months passed since the first Zeraxian attack. The war had spread throughout the solar system, with battles fought around Jupiter, Mars, and the asteroid belt. The Zeraxians had taken several outer colonies, but their advance had slowed considerably. Their supply lines were stretched thin and their ships faced constant harassment from Earth's growing fleet. On the bridge of the newly commissioned dreadnought Vengeance, Admiral Richard Garcia studied the tactical display. The massive ship hummed with energy, its experimental weapon systems ready for their first real test. "Status report," he ordered. The tactical officer, a young woman named Nicole Foster, responded immediately. "All ships report ready, Admiral. Dr. Grant's shield technology has been installed on the entire fleet. The drone swarms are deployed and awaiting activation codes." Garcia nodded. After months of preparation, Earth was finally ready to launch its counterattack. Operation Hornet's Nest would begin in 6 hours. "Send the coded signal to Major Martinez's team," he ordered. "It's time for Phase 3. Deep in Zeraxian territory, Lisa Martinez received the encrypted message. Her team had spent the past 3 months causing havoc behind enemy lines. They had sabotaged fuel depots, disrupted communication relays, and gathered critical intelligence on Zeraxian fleet movements. "It's time," she told Eric and Peter, who looked exhausted but determined. Living in constant danger had taken its toll, but they had accomplished more than anyone expected. "The primary target?" Eric asked. Lisa pulled up a holographic map. "The central sensor array. When Earth's fleet moves, we need to make sure the Zeraxians are blind to their approach." Peter checked his equipment. "The charges are ready, but the security will be heavy." "We've faced worse," Lisa reminded him. "And we have surprise on our side. They still don't believe humans could operate this deep in their territory without being detected." As they prepared for their most dangerous mission yet, Lisa thought about everything they had learned about their enemy. The Zeraxians were formidable, but predictable. Their rigid command structure meant that unexpected events caused confusion throughout their ranks. No single commander would make decisions without orders from above. Humans, on the other hand, adapted quickly. When communication lines were cut, human officers made their own decisions based on the situation. This fundamental difference had already saved several human colonies from capture. "Let's move," Lisa ordered. "We have 4 hours to reach the target and plant the charges." In the holding area of the Zeraxian flagship, Captain Susan Clark continued her campaign of misinformation. Over the months, she had carefully fed her captors false data about human weaknesses and defense capabilities. "The shield technology. Protecting Europa is unique," she told the Zeraxian scientist who interviewed her regularly. "We don't have the resources to duplicate it for other colonies." The scientist made notes on a datapad. Susan had earned a small amount of trust by appearing to cooperate, always mixing truth with carefully crafted lies. She and Ben had been moved to more comfortable quarters, giving them more opportunities to observe Zeraxian operations. "Admiral Kazthor grows impatient," the scientist said. "The human resistance is stronger than anticipated." Susan hid her satisfaction. "Perhaps the Admiral underestimated us." The ship suddenly shuddered, and alarm sounds filled the corridors. The scientist rushed out, forgetting to seal the door completely in his haste. Susan looked at Ben. "That's our chance." They slipped out of their quarters and moved quickly through the corridors. After months of observation, they knew the ship's layout and security routines. They reached a communication terminal in an unoccupied section. "We have maybe 2 minutes before they notice we're gone." Ben said, keeping watch while Susan accessed the system. Using knowledge gained from watching the Xeraxians operate the controls, Susan sent a short encrypted message to Earth with the flagship's current position and security protocols. Then she found what she had been searching for, the controls for the prisoner transport shuttle. "Time to leave," she told Ben. "And send our hosts a proper goodbye." On Europa, the colony had transformed from a mining outpost to a fortress. Under Lieutenant Jack Howard's guidance, the colonists had turned their technical skills to defense and weapon production. Olivia Grant's laboratory had expanded, with a team of engineers working to improve the shield technology and adapt it for other uses. She had barely slept in weeks, pushing herself to create new defenses against the Xeraxian weapons. "The latest shield modifications are holding," she told Jack as they walked through the underground facility. "But power consumption is still a problem," Jack nodded. "The solar array extensions have helped, but we need a more permanent solution." Frank Daniels joined them, looking tired but determined. "The last of the civilian evacuations is complete. Everyone remaining has volunteered to stay and fight." Colony now housed a mix of miners, engineers, and military personnel, who had arrived in small groups slipping past the Xeraxian blockade. What had started as a desperate stand had become a symbol of human resistance. A young communications officer ran up to them. "Lieutenant, we've just received a priority transmission from Earth Command. Operation Hornet's Nest is a go. The counterattack begins in 5 hours. Jack checked the time. Then we need to be ready to play our part. Prepare all defensive systems. When the main fleet engages the blockade, we'll launch our attack from the surface." On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kazthor received troubling reports from across the front lines. Human resistance was growing stronger, not weaker as he had predicted. Several supply convoys had been destroyed by unknown attackers operating behind Xeraxian lines. The Europa colony still held out. Protected by shield technology, his weapons could not penetrate. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They are an inferior species. Their ships are smaller, their weapons less advanced." His second-in-command, a battle-scarred veteran named Vexcor, suggested cautiously, "Perhaps we should reconsider our approach, Admiral. The humans fight differently than other species we have conquered." "They are simply lucky," Kazthor insisted. "Our superior numbers will overwhelm them eventually." An alarm sounded, and a communication officer reported urgently, "Admiral, the human prisoners have escaped. They've commandeered a transport shuttle." "Destroy it," Kazthor ordered. "We cannot," the officer replied, sounding confused. "They've activated our own safety protocols. Our weapons cannot target a vessel with Xeraxian identification codes." Kazthor slammed his fist against his command chair. Another example of humans using Xeraxian procedures against them. Before he could issue new orders, sensor alarms blared. "Multiple contacts approaching from Sector 7, the sensor operator announced. It's the human fleet, the tactical." Display showed dozens of Earth ships emerging from behind the moons of Jupiter, approaching in a formation the Xeraxians had never encountered before. At the center was a massive vessel, larger than any human ship previously observed. "How did they approach without detection?" Kazthor demanded. As if in answer, another alarm sounded. "Central sensor array is offline. Explosion detected at the main facility." For the first time since the war began, Admiral Kazthor felt a sensation he had never experienced in battle before: uncertainty. The humans were not following any known pattern of warfare. They were creating their own. The Battle of Jupiter was unlike anything seen in Earth's history. The space around the gas giant lit up with weapons fire as the human fleet engaged the Xeraxian ships. Dr. Grant's shield technology glowed blue around Earth vessels, absorbing energy blasts that would have destroyed them otherwise. Admiral Garcia stood calmly on the bridge of the Vengeance, issuing orders as the battle unfolded. The massive ship moved through the chaos, its advanced weapons cutting through Xeraxian defenses. "Launch the drone swarms," Garcia ordered. Thousands of small automated drones shot from launch tubes across the human fleet. Each was barely larger than a human hand but carried enough explosives to damage a Xeraxian ship's sensors or weapons. The swarm split into precise groups, each targeting a specific Xeraxian vessel. "They're trying to adapt," reported Nicole Foster from the tactical station. Their ships are changing formation. Garcia nodded. Just as we expected. Deploy second wave ships now. A fresh group of Earth vessels emerged from hiding behind one of Jupiter's moons, catching the Xeraxian fleet in a perfect crossfire. The Xeraxians had fallen for the oldest trick in human military history: divide your forces and attack from multiple directions. In the heart of the battle, a small transport shuttle dodged between larger ships. Inside, Captain Susan Clark and Commander Ben Nelson worked frantically to avoid being hit by either side. "Earth Fleet, this is Captain Clark of the Defiance," Susan broadcast on the emergency channel. "We've escaped from the Xeraxian flagship and request immediate assistance." The response came quickly. "Captain Clark, this is Admiral Garcia. It's good to hear your voice. Follow the coordinates we're sending. We'll provide cover." As their shuttle changed course, Susan looked out at the battle raging around them. The humans were fighting with unexpected tactics, ships moving in patterns the Xeraxians couldn't predict, targeting systems the enemy considered unimportant, using their smaller size and greater maneuverability to avoid the heaviest Xeraxian weapons. "They never understood us," she said quietly to Ben. "They saw our preference for peace as weakness." "Their mistake," Ben replied as their shuttle approached the safety of the Earth Fleet's shields. On the surface of Europa, Jack Howard led a team of colonists in their own part of the battle. Using the mining equipment converted to weapons, they targeted the Xeraxian ships in low orbit around the moon. "Fire the main drill laser," Jack ordered. The massive drill, once used to cut through Europa's icy crust, now fired a concentrated beam of energy at a Xeraxian cruiser. The beam struck precisely where Major Martinez's intelligence had indicated a weak point in the ship's armor. Beside him, Olivia Grant monitored the shield protecting the colony. "Shield holding at 80%. We can keep this up for hours." Rank 2. Daniels coordinated the other attack teams spread across the colony's surface. Team 3 reports direct hit on enemy engine systems. Team 7 has disabled their communication array. Jack watched as the damaged Xeraxian ships began to retreat from Europa's orbit. Simple miners and scientists had just defeated trained Xeraxian warriors. The impossible was happening throughout the solar system. Admiral Kazathor's flagship shuddered as another explosion rocked the vessel. His command center was filled with smoke and the sounds of damage control alarms. "We must retreat," urged Vexcor. "The humans have disabled half our fleet. Our remaining ships are surrounded." Kazathor growled in frustration. This was not how the invasion was supposed to proceed. The humans should have surrendered when faced with superior force. Instead, they had adapted, innovated, and turned the battle in their favor. "Admiral," called a communications officer. "Incoming transmission from the human flagship. They're requesting to speak with you." Kazathor hesitated, then nodded. The image of Admiral Garcia appeared on the main screen. "Admiral Kazathor," Garcia said calmly, "your fleet is trapped. Your supply lines have been cut by our covert operations teams. You have two choices: surrender or be destroyed." "Xeraxians do not surrender," Kazathor replied automatically. "Then you haven't faced an enemy like us before," Garcia said. "Look around you, Admiral. Your rigid tactics failed against our adaptability. Your hierarchical command structure collapsed. When we cut your communications, you thought our peaceful nature made us weak. You were wrong." As if to emphasize Garcia's words, another explosion shook the Xeraxian flagship. Kazathor looked at the tactical display. The human was right. They were surrounded, cut off, and outmaneuvered. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Kazathor gave the order he never thought possible. "Cease fire. Open a channel to all Xeraxian vessels. We will negotiate terms." 6 months later, representatives from Earth and the Xeraxian Empire met on neutral territory, a space station orbiting the dwarf planet Ceres. The war had ended with a decisive human victory, but now came the harder task of establishing a lasting peace. Captain Susan Clark, now promoted to Admiral, led the Earth delegation. She had insisted that the peace talks include not just military concerns but cultural exchange and trade agreements. "War is easy," she had told Defense Secretary Parker. Peace is harder, but it's what we wanted from the beginning. Admiral Kazathor entered the conference room with his advisors. He looked older, the scales around his eyes dulled from stress. The war had cost him much of his status in the Empire, but the Empress had kept him as lead negotiator due to his first-hand experience with humans. "Admiral Clark," he said, using her new rank. "We meet again under better circumstances." Susan nodded. "Better for everyone, Admiral Kazathor. Shall we begin?" As the delegates took their seats, Major Lisa Martinez stood at her security post near the Earth delegation. Her team had returned from Xeraxian space as heroes, though few would ever know the full extent of their contributions to the victory. Dr. Olivia Grant sat further down the table. Her shield technology had transformed Earth's defenses and earned her a place at the peace talks. Europa Colony had become a symbol of human resilience, and she had agreed to lead a new research facility there. When all were seated, Susan opened the proceedings. "We gather today not as enemies, but as two species with much to learn from each other. The war has ended, but our history together is just beginning." Kazathor looked at the humans around the table, a former prisoner, a covert operative, a scientist who had been a simple colony researcher. None of them had been warriors before his invasion forced them to become so. "There is one question I must ask," he said. "Your species chose peace for so long. How did you become so effective at war so quickly?" Susan considered the question carefully before answering. "Humans aren't dangerous because we love war, Admiral. We're dangerous because we hate it, yet we've become exceptionally good at it. We fight hardest when fighting is the last thing we want to do." She looked around at her fellow humans, people who had risked everything to defend their homes and freedom. "You declared war on us thinking we were easy prey. Instead, you found the most dangerous species in the galaxy, humans who fight not for conquest or glory, but for their right to live in peace." Kazathor nodded slowly. It was a lesson the Xeraxian Empire would not forget. And as the peace talks began in earnest, a new chapter opened between two species who had finally learned to respect each other.